everyone for joining us today. We're actually a bit blown away by this session on JobKeeper. We put out the marketing yesterday about 2:30, which we were really annoyed at ourselves at being so slow to the punch, and we've had a record attendance. Numbers have never been higher. So what that tells us is that in such a short period, so many people have looked at this and thought, this is the number one issue that's affecting me at the moment. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. We're looking forward to our session today. We actually put quite a bit of content into this one because it's a really hot topic at the moment, and it does centre around businesses actually receiving cash in the form of a payment from the government over the next 6 months for eligible businesses. So this package was put together in about 11 days. So it was an announcement by the Prime Minister on the Monday afternoon. The following Wednesday, it was pushed through Parliament, and Thursday received royal assent. That's crazy, and there'll be unintended consequences. So our job, and we've had this directive from the Tax Office and also the Tax Practitioner Board, is our directive is to do the best with what we've got within the rules that are there. There'll be some unintended consequences. There'll be some uncertainty, and that's okay. So the thing we've got, so therefore the agenda we're going to run with today is here, which is, we're going to set the scene for a start. We're going to talk about patience and preparation. Michael's going to take us through some background, key terms, and the cash flow cycle. I'm going to talk you through some preparation actions and the ongoing reporting requirements. Then Michael will talk you through the 8 common questions. So 8 questions we've been getting asked, and we've got answers for those. And we won't necessarily like them all, but there's answers. And then we'll talk about how we can support you over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, and beyond that for the next 6 months, whilst this legislation is actually at play. So we've got a lot packed into today's session, and I'm really looking forward to working on there. What Michael and I are going to do right now, though, is we're going to flick our cameras off, just purely because that allows us to focus on the words rather than necessarily the pictures, and that's worry about our background. So we'll just do that. Go there. And beauty. So there we go. The theme we've put together today is around patience and preparation. And on the screen there, the reason we've gone with the view of the Melbourne Cup winning horse by a head and the clock tower. I love the analogy of a 3,200 metre horse race, and it's the Melbourne Cup. It's the biggest race of the year, and the patience of jockeys is the key. It's the patience that makes it. So right now, and that can be the difference between many millions of dollars and glory forever, or running second in a Melbourne Cup, which is nice, but not the same. So what we're asking everyone for is to show this patience. As I touched on, the legislation's only just been launched, and a lot of it is actually going to be legislation on the run, or actually interpretation on the run. So right now, there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of questions. But what we need our clients to focus on is the preparation piece. It's all about preparing now. It's about doing the things that get you ready for that time when we'll be able to launch, which will happen later next week. So Michael's going to run us through a few more screens around high-level sort of stuff, what sort of stuff we need to get a picture for, and also how we can get ourselves ready for this process. So I'll flick over to you there, Michael.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, I'm just going to go through a few key terms, but what's happened since 30th of March? It's only been 17 or 18 days, so it's moving very quickly, I should say. Background, this is the things you've got to get your head around. It's a wage subsidy program. Therefore, it's basically going to be money paid and administered by the tax office in arrears. The key difference too is, I want to make this point before we get into it. There is a difference between registering your interest and electing to participate, and Tim will touch on that later on. But I've been getting a lot of calls about, hey, I've registered my interest. Is that all I have to do? No. So on that, so a wage subsidy program, it is effective from the 30th of March to the 27th of September. So it's going to impact a lot of people. for a long period of time. It's designed to be the formal link in the chain between employers and employees, that there's a greater chance of the employee having a job when we come out of this lockdown situation and life gets back to similar to what we knew. And it's designed to keep businesses going and obviously reduce unemployment lines. So the key terms we've really got to get our heads around: eligible employer. For most of our clients, that means basically they're under 1 billion in turnover, that the impacts of coronavirus has to have had effect of reducing their turnover by 30% or more, and it's 15% for charities. Another term we've got to come to grips with is eligible employee. Now, there's a number of characteristics of an eligible employee. One is that they're currently employed, or if they've been stood down, they've been rehired. They were employed as of the 1st of March 2020 in your business. They're either a full-time worker, a part-time worker, or a long-term casual. And that means a regular, a systematic basis of employment for longer than 12 months. The employee must be at least 16 years of age, an Australian resident, and certain visa holders, and not claiming JobKeeper from another employer. And the employee will have to sign off on those things as well. A new term that's just come along called eligible business participant. That came around because these rules were originally, I suppose, favouring businesses where the directors or the owners or the people running the business weren't actually employees, so they were missing out. So an eligible business participant is an individual who's actively engaged in the business and carrying on that business, and can either be a sole trader, an individual partner of a partnership, a director or individual shareholder of a company, and an adult beneficiary of a trust. The distinction there is that only one of those people can register. You may have 2 or 3 eligible business participants in your business, but only one of you can register to receive the $1,500 per fortnight subsidy. We're going to be talking over the next couple of slides about JobKeeper payment fortnights. Now, the fortnight cycle starts on the 30th of March, and obviously the first cycle goes to the Sunday, April the 12th. And this is especially important when you have workers that are earning less than the $1,500 per fortnight currently. And one of the other things that they've just thrown in for good measure is the Fair Work Act 2009. There's been some amendments made to that, and it allows for some additional flexibility for employment arrangements in terms of standing down and paid annual leave and things like that. And we're not going to focus on that session in this session because we're not the experts in that area. But if you do want more information, feel free to contact us. We can put you in contact with HR expert that we're familiar with. And the last thing I want to go through now is the cash flow cycle. Now, the employees must be paid in full, less pay-as-you-go installments, of course, before the last day of the fortnight for all eligible employees. This is critical, and I suppose it's not going to impact those employees that are paid more than the $1,500 per fortnight because they're getting paid anyway. But certainly anyone that's not must be paid in full before the last day of the fortnight. Now, there is one exception. I think Tim will touch on that later, which is in the month of April, but we'll talk about that. The ATO payment, when you do get it, should you be eligible, is made monthly in arrears. So you are forking out the money first and then getting money paid in arrears. It's similar to an apprentice rebate, for example. So there's a lump sum in arrears, and the first payment scheduled, of course, is in the first week of May 2020. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and the first week of 2020. So they're the key, I suppose, terms that you need to come to grips with. to be able to work through whether you're eligible or not. So, Tim, I'll throw back to you now to go through the preparations and actions and ongoing reporting before we get into those commonly asked questions.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So what you will see there is just there's so much new terminology and legislation we're dealing with. What I want to get to is the actual actions you need to take between now and next week and a half. So it's been a massive learning curve for us as well over the last couple of days, and we're not going to dive deeply into it because that would blow a mind. We could probably do a half-day session if we wanted to, but let's look at the key issues. And the first thing to note is, back to this theme of patience, is enrolment is not an option until April the 20th. So that's next Monday. You actually can't enroll until then. That is different to register, which Michael touched on earlier. So the next few days are about focusing on preparation actions rather than worrying about what ifs. Let's not let that distract us at all. The first piece of the preparation is a self-assessment process for the decline in a turnover test. Now, we've highlighted down the bottom of this screen, document, 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 and it's critical because any self-assessment program, and even more so when you're receiving a discretionary payment from the tax office, is documents just cannot be enough. Unless you're a clear-cut case where your BAS from 2020 is 30% less than the BAS from 2019, you're going to need these extra documents. And for most people, the reality is that January to March for a quarterly lodger for 2020 won't be 30% less than January to March 2019 because there was 2 months of normal trading prior to March happening. So we'll need to be able to show that there's been a decline in turnover of 30% for at least a month period. So what we're thinking that some of those documents will be minutes of meetings to describe how you sat down and assessed the position of the business, income reports, interim financial accounts, there'll be monthly sales reports, similar data, just having it all ready for the ATO, because there is no doubt, given the volume of money here, there's going to be questions asked, particularly where there's discrepancies between the BAS lodged from the prior year and the current year, and there's a decline in income not being at that 30% level. And it's even doubly important. We talk about some terms on the projected GST turnover. That's a new term again. When you're projecting a GST turnover, you actually can claim the JobKeeper again, but they'll want even more serious evidence about business owners who've taken steps to assess their income for a month ahead to trigger eligibility. So it may well be some minutes of meetings around, well, we used to be open for 5 sessions a week. We're now only open for 2 sessions a week. And based upon that and our enrolments forecast and the like, we therefore have made this assessment, because there is onus on you as the business provider you have to make this assessment, and you have to be able to stand up when there's pressure put on and say, no, this is how we made this assessment. Here's the documentation that supported where we're coming from. The other thing is there'll be an ATO and commissioner discretion that can be applied in the case of businesses that haven't had significant change year on year, or where the other tests don't work around projected GST turnover and current GST turnover. And some of the examples we've already seen would be businesses that didn't exist this time last year. Maybe they've opened up a new branch this year. Maybe there's something that's just happened in their business where it's expanded significantly earlier in the year and all of a sudden it's contracted, but that contraction isn't less than 30% of last year's turnover. So there's quite a bit in it, but the summary of this sheet here is we need to firstly assess, are we going to pass the decline in turnover tests? And if we're not going to pass it just as simply as a BAS to BAS type arrangement, then what are the other methodologies we can use to make this available for us? Then there's actual application. So once we've done that, that's all well and good. But there's actually applications that need to be lodged. This is the stuff that happens from next week. You'll need to have details ready, and this is part of the preparation, of all the eligible employees. And we would suggest to anyone who's actually employing at the moment and looking to to access through their employees, single touch payroll becomes a higher priority than ever. So if you haven't got into single touch payroll yet, there's certainly the time to make sure we do that. If employers want to receive a payment from the first week of May, this is really critical. They'll need to be registered before the 26th of April 2020, because that is the end of the JobKeeper payment fortnight. So that terminology becomes really important. They'll be registered by them. They'll also need to actually have physically paid the employees before the 30th of June 2020, sorry, 30th of April, my mistake, 30th of April 2020, to be eligible for a payment. So it is a reimbursement system. It's not a system whereby you can say, oh yeah, we owe them money, when we get it from the tax office, we'll pay them. You need to have paid them first and then be reimbursed. And for each employee, there must be a JobKeeper employee nomination notice completed. This is, so documentation, again, each employee must sign off that they're part of this scheme. And the word scheme can be misused, but this is actually called a scheme. This is how fresh this all is. If there's an eligible business participant form, so if you're an eligible business participant, let's say, for example, you've got a company where you're not an employee of the company, you're not getting a wage, but you are drawing an income from that, whether it's in the form of a dividend or some other form of payment, or you're a trust where you're a beneficiary of the trust rather than an employee, there's going to be an eligible business participant form to be completed. As at last night, I think we had a look at last night around about 11 o'clock, still not ready. There's still no form there. Now, we're really hoping to see that very, very, very soon, because clearly it's going to be important. But how can we actually apply it if it doesn't exist yet? So very, very hopeful to see that before the end of the week. But the reality is that form will need to be completed and submitted with the tax office, and then they'll have to assess the eligibility. So what we're saying here is the time frame is really, really short, particularly if you're seeking a payment for your April payroll, and you'll really need to get your skates on in this registration process. This is game on next week. It really is. Well, game on from now, but then being prepared for the next week during the application process. And of course, that's not where it stops. If the government's going to be giving out this sort of money, it stands to reason that they're going to actually want some ongoing reporting. So there is going to be a series of monthly reporting that's going to have to happen with forms. Again, these forms are to be issued, but there's electronic reporting requirements. But with single touch payroll will probably be a really key aspect again. That will actually, single touch payroll should actually minimize the amount of time you need to spend doing reporting, because we'll have to report on, so far we know there's a number of eligible employees, and you also have to report on your business turnover. So details on our monthly reporting is a bit sketchy at the moment, but we know it's coming. So we're seeing here that this is actions that need to be taken. It really is. We've talked in some of the recent sessions about things that would be nice to have. This is something that you really must be doing if you're going to be eligible to receive the JobKeeper payments. So we might just with that flick back to Michael. I guess that's heavy and that's quick, and because that's one of our purposes here is to not bog you down with all details for every different situation. But I'll flick back to you, Michael. We have been having some regular questions come through, so we thought, well, why not answer the 8 most common questions? So over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, just there's so much in that, but when you sit back and think about it, imagine that the ATO is handing out this money, and say an eligible employer has 70 employees. If you do the numbers, and of course being accountants we have, that business stands to receive over $136,000 over 26 weeks. So we really would expect some serious reporting requirements. And I did actually read where they're expecting, especially around the eligibility of the business and the proof that they've dropped by 30% or more, they're expecting you to hold onto those records and the records from your employees for 5 years. So yeah, be prepared down the track for a knock on the door from the tax office. So with that in mind, let's go through some of the questions that we've been fielding over the past couple of weeks. The first one there is, do businesses have to meet the decline in turnover test on an ongoing basis? Short answer, no. Once you've actually proved and been accepted that you've been impacted by more than 30%, that is it. You've passed it, you've passed it. So I'm going to go back to, though, that you really do want to have your documentation, because if they're only going to ask once, when they do come and ask because it's self-assessment, have your information there. Second question, what about if the business turnover has not yet decreased by 30%, but is predicted to do so? Well, Tim, you already touched on there. That's when the employer really needs to look at that reasonably expected income test. And it may be a series of doing some cash flow projections and things like that, because a lot of business we work with, you're right, Tim, haven't had that 30% reduction up to the end of March. But based on the pipeline, there is going to be. So you've got that reasonably expected income test to fall back on. Are employers required to continue to pay employees to qualify for JobKeeper? Yes, yes, yes. It's a reimbursement model, if you like. So yes, you are required to continue to pay employees who qualify for that JobKeeper payment. What about stood down employees? Do we need to back pay to 30th of March 2020? Again, yes, it is a reimbursement program. So it stands to reason that the payment needs to be made first to be eligible for the reimbursement. Next question, can employers select which of their eligible employees are covered by the JobKeeper scheme? No, the terminology that the guidelines are using is one in, all in. So you cannot pick and choose as to which employees are covered. Again, the employee has to come back to you and accept the conditions that you're putting to them, but no, you don't have the choice to pick and choose. Are the JobKeeper payments from the ATO accessible income to the business? Absolutely they are, but there's no GST attached to that payment. But yes, the income will be treated as accessible income. And the best idea there is to just put a new line in your income profit and loss software in your chart of accounts as JobKeeper reimbursement and allocated that way. Are employers required to deduct pay-as-you-go withholding from amounts paid to employees? Absolutely. So in reality, employees won't be putting $1,500 in their pocket. There'll be $1,500 less pay-as-you-go withholding. Are employers subject to the super guarantee scheme? Look, generally no. If you're paying someone over the $1,500 per fortnight anyway now, well, you'll be paying normal SGC, normal super, normal work cover, everything, because you're basically paying them over the $1,500. If, for example, you normally only pay someone $1,000 per fortnight and you have to top them up to $1,500 per fortnight, you have to pay super on the $1,000 per fortnight, but it's your discretion as to whether you top up on that extra $500. So, Tim, they're the top questions that we've been receiving. So back to you about how our clients can work with us over the next 2 weeks, and as you say, up to 6 months.
Thanks, Michael. And look, I'm going to be really upfront with this and say, talking about pricing is awkward. Let's not kid ourselves. And we've actually done some backflips internally on this. And then we thought, okay, let's just really follow our core values of our business. That's why we have them. And one of them is honesty. So honesty being, tell it how it is with respect. So I just wanted to set this slide up so there's no surprises, there's no expectation gap, the like. We love working with our clients and we need to help them through this, we believe. We also don't want them to feel that, okay, there's a problem coming here, or how much is this going to cost, what work's involved. No surprises. That's basically the way we've been thinking this through. So we spent plenty of hours chatting through the options. And as you touched on earlier, Michael, it's pretty serious stuff, because the employee, the business owner that has, say, 7 employees, stands to receive over $136,000 over the next 6 months. So we need to get it right. And to that end, what we've set up is a 3-option type setup, where we have a DIY, so do it yourself, setup only service, and I set up a monthly reporting service. You'll see on the screen there the different options. If you go the DIY, we are absolutely fine with that. We're just being really clear up front that if there's a short email, short questions, that sort of stuff, there will be a fee attached to whatever time's involved, just on an hourly rate basis, because the reality is this window's tight, and we've put some extra resources to the service over the next week, the areas of our business. So we have to charge that. And I guess the other thing is too, from our point of view, is we want to be fair to all. So if someone is client, we've got clients that will commit to us with the setup only service or the setup a monthly reporting service. It doesn't seem reasonable then that someone who's doing it themselves pops in for 6 or 7 questions and has no fee. So I just want to be really clear that that's how we're going to approach this, to try to have some equity for all. And again, we're absolutely fine with that. And I guess what the options are, the setup only service. So there'll be some people who want us just to do the setup and say there's a lot to be done in a very short time frame. Can you support on that? Absolutely fine. Happy with that. Let's have an agreed fee for the setup. And if they want to have bespoke support afterwards, again, same process, charge on an hourly rate basis. And there are other clients who have already expressed to us, look, can you just deal with this? We have so much going on in our business that we don't need to have this distraction right now. We're busy moving our business, we're pivoting, we're building continuity plans, we're building cash forecasts. The last thing we need is this as well. So where that's the case, that we will put together an arrangement where we have an agreed fee and payment terms on the engagement for the whole of the 6-month period with no additional charges at all. It's all up front, and they'll know what they're up for. So obviously we really looking to make this as cost efficient as possible, but part of the integrity of our business is also to be really upfront about how we're thinking through the next coming months from ourselves. So that's the options that are available. I'll go back over to you, Michael, sort of to wrap it all up for us.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, look, it's never easy to chat about fees, and as I said, we just want to be transparent and upfront, so which is part of our value. So thank you once again. Now you'll see on the screen here, you got Tim's details. He's gladly volunteered. We use that word loosely. To set up any personalised fee proposal. So if you want to email Tim directly, and I'm sure he'll be talking to me about it as well. Look, if you prefer to go your do-it-yourself option, then fantastic. And if it works best for you, we respect that choice, as Tim has said. So just about to wrap up, but what I want to actually personally say publicly is thank you, Tim. I don't think he got a lot of sleep last night, the night before. Tim's actually put the bulk of these together. So hats off to you, Tim. Thank you for the time you've invested, and I'm sure the attendees got a lot out of that. I noticed there's a few questions have just come through. We will get back to you, definitely, because I'm conscious of the time, half an hour right on the dot. So that's all from us. Thank you to everyone for attending, and look forward to chatting you next week on another topic. See you later.
Thanks, Michael.